Imagine this. You're standing behind the glass door, hands trembling, holding that tiny velvet gift box you hid for a month as a surprise for your husband. And you hear him laughing with his friend. I bet you $5,000 she'll be absolutely sobbing. When I hit her with the divorce papers right here at our 15th anniversary party, women are so predictable. Kyle asks, what if she doesn't? Your husband Ethan sneers. Then she still has nothing to fight with. Everything's in my name. The prenup I had, my lawyer draft guarantees it. She'll walk away with nothing but the clothes on her back, and she loses custody of Lily. Game over. That box suddenly felt like a ton of bricks. Inside was the watch he'd been eyeing all year, something I secretly worked extra shifts and saved every dollar to buy for this special day. His words were a knife, stabbing the gift before I could even give it. My heart was pounding, threatening to burst. But one massive question echoed in my mind. How do you flip a chessboard when every single piece belongs to the enemy? So predictable, he laughs, his voice echoing through the glass patio door. I stood there, clenching that velvet box until my knuckles were white. Kyle laughs. Rachel's gonna cry when she sees the divorce papers, right? Ethan smirks, full of himself. She's gonna be devastated. It's always the same with women. In that moment, I looked down at the box, that symbol of love, sacrifice, and trust, now just a cruel prop in their stupid bet. And I knew I stopped being his wife, started being myself. But Ethan was dead wrong about one thing. I heard every single word. I knew I had to start a whole new game. One false step meant losing everything. I didn't know if I'd win. I just knew I couldn't lose. And I had one thing he never expected. His own arrogance was about to become my deadliest weapon. My name is Rachel Morgan, 36. For a long time, I honestly thought I was the luckiest woman alive. Ethan, my husband, the successful guy, always charming, the one all our friends admired. For his status and stable income, people always called me a trophy wife. But inside that big, beautiful house, I slowly shrank into myself, trapped in this sickly sweet fake marriage. This story didn't start at the barbecue. It started with those cruel, tiny smiles long before they placed a bet on my tears. Ethan used to joke at crowded parties. I could leave you any time. You know that? You leave me. Who's going to support you? The internet? Every time he laughed, it felt like a silent knife cut in my back. His eyes would sparkle, his hand on my shoulder like it was affection, but his fingers would always clench. It didn't hurt, but it was just enough to remind me who was in charge. Everyone would laugh out loud. I'd laugh to my mouth smiling, but my tongue was bitter with the taste of betrayal. Under the table, my fingernails dug deep into my palm, leaving pale crescent marks. My stomach muscles would clench painfully, like an invisible hand was squeezing the air out of my ribcage. I became a living statue, smiling on the outside, completely shattered inside. No one saw the weight of those words. No one realized how often and how easily they came. I stopped wearing that soft red silk dress, the one Claire gave me after. Ethan scoffed. Looks cheap, like something you'd find at a flea market. You actually think making money online is a real job? He'd sneer at a party, his voice sharp as a razor every morning. I checked myself in the mirror, rehearsing every word, just to survive the day. One time, I laughed too loudly in a crowd, and Ethan leaned over, whispering, "Don't embarrass me, Ray." From then on, I learned to laugh just enough and talk just low enough, so I wouldn't seem too much in his eyes. I started checking his tone before I opened my mouth, praying my words wouldn't trigger another round of criticism. "Don't embarrass me in front of my colleagues. You understand?" Ethan would say, with a smile and the gentle clink of his coffee cup on the wood table. "What do you even do, honey? Sell trinkets online?" I smiled back, a smile I had perfected at first. I used to defend him. "He's just joking." I told Claire, my best friend since high school. After she heard him sneer at me during a picnic, Claire looked at me, her eyes full of doubt. "He doesn't have to mean it, Rachel. You look like you're disappearing." She was. Right. I stopped posting on social media, skipped coffee dates with friends, ignored texts from my mom with the excuse of being busy. My world shrunk down, revolving entirely around Ethan's mood, his rhythm, his boundaries. He loved control, subtle control. When my mother visited, he'd raise his voice. "Why is the kitchen such a mess, Rachel? I forgot to pick up the dry cleaning." He'd mutter, just loud enough for me to hear. Useless. But low enough to deny it if I questioned him. I told myself, this is marriage. Not a fairy tale, but it's stable. It's going to last. At least he wasn't cheating. At least he wasn't violent. At least then a company party happened, the chandeliers twinkling, glasses clinking, the subtle waft of expensive cologne. Ethan turned to me, his eyes glazed over from beer, his voice ice. Cold. "You're just like the rest of them. Always needy, clinging, weak." My mouth went dry, my cheeks hot with the familiar shame. I didn't ask him what he meant. I rarely asked anymore. That night, the front door slammed shut, the locks snapping into place. Ethan stumbled into the kitchen, glass of water in hand, muttering about colleagues, the stench of beer hitting me every time he spoke. I stood in the dim glow of the kitchen light, my fingers gripping the counter edge, then smiled, half joking. "You joke about leaving me so much. Don't you remember that prenup we signed on our wedding day?" Ethan snickered, his eyes heavy, his voice slurring. "That contract? It only protects me, Rachel. You think you could ever beat me?" He slammed his hand down, knocking over the glass shattering on the floor, then collapsed onto a chair, snoring, oblivious that those words were about to become my weapon. That contract wasn't something. I just found it had always been there. Signed right after the ceremony with Ethan's arrogant smile. Thinking it only protected his old house. Claire, who was already a lawyer back then, checked every line, adding clauses so it couldn't be easily overturned. I folded the contract, putting it into an old wooden box. Under the letters Ethan wrote before the wedding, a reminder of the days. I used to believe him. I emailed a copy to the secret email Claire set up for me years ago, just in case. That night, I cooked dinner like always, asked Ethan about work, smiled as he told stories about his office, washed the dishes, and wiped the counter. The sound of the running water drowning out my pounding heart. If you've ever been hurt by jokes like that, drop a comment below and share. This story is just starting after that barbecue. I started looking at Ethan with different eyes. No more fear. No more anger, just cold calculation. I was making decent money from my online sales, but I never bragged. I downplayed it, avoided the topic, always letting Ethan shine in everyone's eyes. Every time he was on his phone, ignoring me, I memorized every detail. The dismissive look, the mean little jokes. I opened a notebook, not some fancy floral thing, but a plain spiral notebook hidden under the mattress by my side. In it, I logged his comments, his moods, the days he came home at 2 a.m. The heavy scent of jasmine mixed with tequila clinging to his shirt. I didn't have a clear plan, not really, but then at his company's New Year party, when Ethan stood in front of the new hires, laughing. My wife's only hobby is spending money online. I didn't cry. I was just 5 minutes late one day, and he snapped. "Do you realize how much this humiliates me in front of people?" Another time, I laughed loud, and he frowned. "Don't be so loud in front of my friends. It's tacky." Those little jabs, they sounded light as air, but they were slowly sanding down my self-worth piece by painful piece. I excused myself to the restroom, stared in the mirror, my lips pressed tight. He thinks I'm soft, easily broken, I thought, gripping the side of the sink, the water dripping drip dash drip dash drip dash drip dash. I used to be that person. Not anymore. A few months. Later, folding his pants, I found the receipt in Ethan's pocket. 2 glasses of red wine, a pricey hotel room, a room service cheese plate dated Valentine's Day. Another time, I picked up a jasmine-scented cologne from his jacket one. He had never bought me. We were supposedly miles apart that day. He said he was on a work trip. Didn't confront him. I took pictures of the cologne and the receipt, saving them in a folder named The Plan on my old laptop. One night, I was backing up those screenshots of his texts to an external drive. I heard Ethan's car suddenly pull up outside. 3 hours early, my heart plummeted. The progress bar on the screen, 72%. It's too damn slow. The sound of the key turning in the lock, 85%. Footsteps in the hallway, 92%. Rachel, where are you? His voice boomed from the stairs. I ripped the plug out in a panic, but the drive was stuck. 98%. The office door opened. I spun around, drive hidden behind my back, my face ghost white. Ethan just stood there, his eyes scanning the open laptop. Then me. It's late. What are you doing? My breath caught in my throat. Just checking last-minute orders. Honey. He looked at me for a beat too long, his eyes drilling into me, then unexpectedly walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. Don't. Stay up late. It's not healthy. Then he walked away. I let out a shaky breath, my back soaked in cold sweat. One small slip, and everything I was building would have been blown up. It became my silent routine, saving texts, receipts. Hotel photos all filed away neatly. I wouldn't go anywhere without Ethan's nod. I watched his expression before speaking in public, terrified an innocent comment would trigger a mocking reply. One day, I put on red lipstick, wore the silk dress Claire gave me. But Ethan shot me a look. Who are you trying to impress? All decked out like that? I froze, then changed, texting my friend. Sorry, can't make it. One evening at dinner, Ethan tossed out, if we divorce, you'll come crawling back to me. Don't even know how to reset the Wi-Fi. I nodded, poured him more wine, and smiled. You're right. But I stayed for Lily, afraid she'd lose her family. Yet every cruel joke made me realize leaving was the only way to truly protect her. Late at night, doing dishes, I saw Lily standing at the doorway. Her eyes sad. She'd heard her dad mock her mom's online trinket selling in front of his friends. And I knew my smile was nothing but a performance. Our house held a weird stillness, not peaceful, but stretched thin like a wire about to snap. I started declining coffee dates, movies, texting too busy, and shutting off my phone. I quietly left the old group chats, claiming I was tired. No one called me Ray anymore, and I wasn't even sure they remembered me. Ethan just had to raise his eyebrows, give a faint smile, and I knew I was too much. No hitting, no yelling, but my true self was being erased layer by layer. Then one night, jolted awake from a nightmare, Ethan's voice echoing in the dark. You'll have nothing. I sat up, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, a voice inside. Me whispered, not true anymore. I had the prenup. I had the plan folder. And I had time. That night, I stopped pretending. I wasn't his wife anymore, was his shadow. Polite, perfect, observing, preparing. That contract, the one Ethan signed with a notary on our wedding day, smugly thinking it only protected him. That was my foundation now. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I knew. One day he'd try his old control game, okay? And I would be ready. I stood in Claire's office, the fluorescent lights humming faintly, shining down on the contract I gave her. He signed this voluntarily, Claire asked, raising an eyebrow. I nodded, silent. She leaned back in her leather chair, which gave a little squeak, put on her glasses, and read. After a few minutes, Claire looked up, her expression a mix of pity and fierce admiration. Sharp, she said, tapping the paper. Ethan handed you the weapon himself. You just needed to choose the moment to use it. I sat across from her, my hands tightly clasped in my lap. I don't want revenge. I just want safety for Lily and me. Claire nodded. You'll get it. But we need to reinforce this. Make sure it's ironclad if he decides to file first. We got down to business. Claire drafted the appendix, clarifying the vague terms. ensuring that if Ethan tried to pull a fast one, he'd be trapped by his own overconfidence. We added clauses protecting shared assets, clarified financial division, and made sure the evidence that Ethan signed willingly was solid his signature. The date? No coercion. Claire handed me a USB, a printed copy, and a look that took me back the way we used to scheme behind the school library. You know the best part about divorce law in California? Claire asked, her eyes lighting up. One party willfully conceals or transfers assets during the lead-up to divorce. The judge can make an adverse distribution, even award the entire concealed asset to the other party. And Ethan... She lowered her voice, smiling as shifting money through a shell company in Nevada. So good news. I already have copies of the transfer agreements and the transaction trails. It's not just cheating, he's committing marital asset fraud. I understood for the first time. It wasn't just about revenge. This was about using the very system he trusted to hold him accountable. And we had one more secret card. His mistress, who, it turns out, wasn't as loyal as he thought. She was ready to testify in exchange for protection. But this wasn't a joke anymore. This was strategic warfare. And we were playing the long game. That night, I came home to find Ethan watching football. Beer bottles and socks scattered all over the living room floor. The TV blared an echo from a life I no longer belonged to. "Dinner's almost ready," I said, my voice soft. He grunted, eyes glued to the screen. That was the start of my performance. And I played the role of the perfect wife better than I ever thought possible. I laughed when he mocked my spending habits in front of his friends, kissed his cheek when he boasted about his promotion at the company party, hazed a toast even though I knew he got the promotion thanks to those business trips, scented with something that wasn't mine. If you've ever had to hide your strength, waiting for the perfect moment, please share here because we are not alone in this journey. But right now, I want your prediction. How do you think Rachel will flip the script? Comment 1 if you think she'll use the cheating evidence. 2 if you believe in the power of the prenup. Or 3 if you think there's another shocking twist waiting. I stopped arguing when Ethan sneered. Instead, I complimented the bottle of wine. He chose the restaurant he liked, even the new cologne he wore, though, in my head. I was thinking, this cologne is expensive. Sure. But not as expensive as the price you're about to pay for your arrogance. He thought I was weakening, becoming more compliant. What he didn't see was me sharpening my weapon. Ethan gradually let his guard down. Believing the fire in me was extinguished, he started getting careless, not more complacent, coming home late without explanation, leaving his phone face up on the counter. Messages flashing from unsaved numbers. One text popped up. Tonight, the old hotel. Ethan left for the gym right after. I opened our shared laptop, syncing his phone data to the plan. Folder on the cloud. The password was Lily's birthday. I forwarded the screenshots to the secret email Claire set up for me. Not a single tear. Not a single frown. I walked into the kitchen, made his favorite lasagna. The rich smell of oregano and cheese filling the air. He came home to a hot meal and a warm smile. Best dinner all week, he said, unaware that I had just logged more evidence at a weekend barbecue. As I carried the fruit platter out back, the scent of charcoal smoke mixing with the afternoon sun tie. Heard Ethan and Kyle laughing near the grill. Wanna bet? I'm gonna serve her the divorce papers right on our 15th anniversary. She cry buckets. Women, right? Papers are all ready, Ethan said smugly. I stood there, gripping the fruit platter like it was the last thing keeping me from shattering, but I didn't cry. I arranged each slice of strawberry into a perfect spiral, my eyes dry. Ethan walked up, put his arm around my waist, and kissed my cheek like he hadn't disappeared last night. You look beautiful today, he said. I smiled. Thank you, darling. Night, in the dim light of the bedroom, I called Claire, my voice calm. Do you still have that old contract? She chuckled through the phone. Lawyer Rachel is back. I stood in front of the mirror, putting on the silver earrings Claire gave me. In college, the metal twinkling in the light. I whispered to myself, "You're not the one who cries. You are the one who survives." The next day, I started recording calls, only the important ones. It's the times Ethan let something slip. Laughing too loudly at things no husband should laugh at. I named the files by date, saving them meticulously. Into the plan. I was a spy in my own home, but not for revenge. I was building a parachute, stitch by painstaking stitch. Because when you live in a house full of cracks, you don't wait for it to collapse. You learn when to step and when to jump. I bought a cheap planner. It became my code book. An X for his late nights. A star for suspicious spending. A dot for every lie I could prove. To anyone else, it was just a grocery list. To me, it was a map. I stopped reacting completely. I became a mirror, reflecting only what Ethan wanted to see. A wife who had surrendered, who had shrunk to fit the tiny, empty space he carved out. He got sloppier. He left cash lying around. Huge, unexplained withdrawals. He went on business trips with a suitcase full of pressed shirts that smelled like something that wasn't mine. Clothes he'd never wear on Zoom. One day, another text popped up on his phone, an intimate tone, mentioning a dinner I wasn't invited to. No pain, just a note. Screenshot, saved to the plan. The final confirmation landed 2 weeks before our 15th anniversary. Ethan had too much to drink, passed out on the sofa, phone unlocked. There, staring at me, was a chain of texts with his mistress. He was gloating about his plan to file the divorce papers and his final ace, a rigged DNA test he was sure would help him seize everything. He typed his final message, "Ready for the show?" Then passed out, completely blind to the fact that the sample for that crucial test had been switched weeks ago. A sequence of messages flashed. She suspects nothing. I'm filing on our anniversary. Want to watch the show? It included a gif of a woman sobbing hysterically. My hands didn't shake. My stomach didn't twist. I screenshotted it, sent it to the secret email, and deleted the message from his phone. That night, found the letter Ethan wrote before the wedding, promising forever. His soft cursive on yellowed paper. I carried it to the fireplace, lit it up, watching the flames lick away every single lie. Ashes fell, and I knew no promise could ever bind me again. The 15th anniversary party table sparkled like a magazine cover. Staged, fake warmth. Candles flickered, glasses clinked. The smell of barbecue drifted by. I smiled, raising a toast to Ethan. His eyes gleamed with complacency, convinced he had already won. But I had the prenup. I had the plan folder. And Claire was standing by, ready. He wanted to see me shatter. I was about to give him a very different kind of performance, with Claire. I finalized the divorce papers, aiding the adultery evidence. Marking, sealing, scheduling, everything. Claire confirmed, her voice crisp. Ethan's cheating triggers the third clause. If you file first, the assets fall to you. The 15th anniversary finally arrived. I prepared the party like a final rite of passage. I wore the white silk dress from our wedding, even though Ethan once called it too much. Red roses in the crystal vase, cinnamon candles, ribs smoking on the grill. Soft jazz playing. Friends and family raised glasses, laughing loudly, unaware that the handwritten letter I had planned to give Ethan was now tucked in my purse. Carnations lined the windows, candles shimmering. The grilled ribs glistened as Ethan carved them. A smug look on his face, like the master of the house. He wore the dark blue suit. I picked silver buttons gleaming. My mother passed around apple cider, her cheeks flushed. Ethan's parents talked about their European trip. Everyone looked happy, oblivious to the storm about to hit. I moved like an automated hostess pouring wine, smiling with my teeth, but not my eyes. Under my silk dress, my legs were shaking, not from fear, but anticipation. My heart beat a steady rhythm. Tonight, 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 Ethan caught my eye, winking. As confident as if he'd just closed $1 million deal. Best ribs ever. Ethan's dad chewed happily. Rachel's had years of practice, Ethan added, putting down his plate like a trophy. What anniversary is this? 14? 15, I gently corrected him, sitting across. He raised his glass to the last 15 years. And to the new beginning ahead, a tiny, sharp sneer in his voice. Laughter filled the table. I smiled, brushing an imaginary crumb from the napkin. When the plates were cleared and the wine was flowing, Kyle whispered to Ethan. Kyle was tipsy, his eyes dull, giving a crooked smile. Ethan nodded, stood up, and tapped his glass with a silver. Spoon, attention, everyone. He cleared his throat. Before dessert, I have a gift for my dear wife. My mom chuckled, expecting a necklace. Claire, sitting at the edge of the table, looked at me, her eyes worried. Ethan pulled an envelope from his suit jacket. Walked over, a self-satisfied grin plastered on his face. Happy anniversary, my love, he said, placing the envelope in front of me. Kyle fumbled, spilling his wine, his hand shaking. The room fell silent. The envelope was stark white, no bow, no card. I looked at it, opened it, perfectly calm. My eyes scanned the first line. Petition for dissolution of marriage, signed, filed. He had highlighted the bottom section, like showing. Off homework. My mother-in-law gripped her prayer beads, her lips trembling. Ethan, ... Why would you do this to Rachel? Claire covered her mouth, her eyes glistening, mixed with admiration. Lily stepped up, taking my hand. I looked at my daughter, asking, if Mom and Dad split, will you be okay? Lily nodded. If it's better for you, I'm on your side. I turned to Ethan. Are you sure about this? He nodded. I want out of this boring marriage. I pulled a silver pen from my purse, clicked the cap, signed the papers with a crisp stroke, dated it, capped the pen, and pushed the envelope back. I've been ready for a long time, I said, my eyes locked on his. That's it? Ethan asked, his voice shaking now. That's it. I reached under the table for a gold-wrapped gift box, placing it between his plate and his arrogance. Your real gift, I said. He ripped the paper, revealing a leather-bound folder. He read the contents, his face turning ashen. The prenup, the one Claire had reinforced and filed first. The evidence of adultery, hotel receipts, photos of him with other women, and the money transfer texts. I took out another gray envelope from the gift box. One more small gift. From an old friend of yours. I handed it to Kyle. His face went white as he opened it. It was a photo of Ethan passionately kissing a younger girl. The girl's face clearly circled. Kyle mumbled, his voice breaking. Is this, Megan, my little sister? The 21-year-old I asked you to look after when she moved here for college? The room was absolutely silent. Ethan looked down, unable to meet anyone's eyes. She wasn't the only mistress, I said softly. She was a victim. And when she found out you planned to use and discard her, she agreed to provide every text, email, and even the recording of your conversation, planning to ditch the old wife. I looked straight at Ethan. You thought you were the one controlling the game. But actually, you were just a pawn in your own chessboard. Then, I revealed the deed to the new house in my and Lily's name, paid for by the online trinket selling he used to laugh at. You bet I'd cry, I said, but I've been planning this since the day you and Kyle laughed in the backyard. Kyle stared open-mouthed, stunned. Ethan clenched the table edge, panic in his eyes. My mother-in-law bowed her head, her hands trembling over her beads. Lily hugged me from behind. You don't have to apologize to anyone, Mom. I raised my glass, smiling. Happy 15th anniversary, darling. The table was silent, only the soft crackle of the candles. I poured wine, my dress rustling, thinking of the letter I'd intended to give him now in the wooden box beside the contract. A reminder of what was lost and what I was about to gain back. I reached into my purse again. One last thing, I said, placing a thin square envelope on the table, lighter than the last one, but heavier than the truth. Ethan stared at it as if it might explode. He opened it, his brows tightly furrowed. Inside were documents from Claire Proof. He tried to transfer assets to a secret account before the party. "I know everything," I said, my voice level, without a single ripple. He looked up, his expression briefly fracturing. Stunned by the documents, his eyes darted around the table, searching for any sign of sympathy, but found only silence. He forced a laugh-a-dead hollow sound as his brain finally caught up to his massive ego. "You planned this," he whispered, his voice hoarse. I looked straight into his eyes, coldly. "You bet I'd cry," laughed with Kyle in the backyard, called me predictable. "No, Ethan, I didn't plan this. Simply prepared. The plan was all yours." The silence was thick. The truth slowly crawled into the room. I took a sip of my wine, the cinnamon flavor clinging to my lips. My mother-in-law dropped her knife. The knife clattered on the plate and her face was ash gray. "Ethan, ... why would you do this?" She choked out, her voice breaking. Claire squeezed my hand under the table, a silent reassurance with her thumb. Kyle tried to speak, but just shook his head, his smugness collapsing like a cheap roof. I stood up, leisurely clearing the untouched dessert plates, my hands steady, my breathing even. "Apple pie or pecan?" I asked the table. No one answered. Ethan sat frozen, his shoulders rigid, his mouth slightly open, a strangled sound caught in his throat. He stared at the documents, his jaw twitching, his eyes scanning the room, looking for someone to rescue him, but his mother was looking down and Kyle avoided his gaze. "Rachel," he started. I cut him off. "No," one sharp final word. He blinked, his voice shattered. "You don't have to do this." "Oh, I didn't do anything," I replied, raising my wine glass without looking at him. "You did it all." Claire watched me, her eyes filled with awe. Lily walked over, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "You don't have to apologize to anyone, Mom. I saw everything." I scanned every face. Their silence was the standing ovation I didn't need to ask for. Ethan leaned back, running a hand through his hair, a habit when he lost control, like when he argued with his boss or failed a big deal. "You thought I'd beg," I said, my voice steady. "You thought I'd fall apart. You were half right until today." He visibly gulped, fear flickering in his eyes. I thought of the new house in Lily's and my name, paid for by the online trinket selling he used to mock Dot soon after the party. I heard the news. The woman in the photo cut all contact when Ethan lost his assets, leaving him alone in his old Pueblo house. Kyle's wife publicly exposed the betting online, causing him to lose a major contract and be shunned by his colleagues. I didn't break. I had just begun. Ethan opened his mouth, trying to say something, but his phone buzzed. A buzz against the glossy wood table. Then a second one, a third. He looked down, his hand trembling, clumsily unlocking it with his thumb. An email from Claire, subject line, "Contract confirmation, legally binding." I watched his face distort every word, ripping away his confidence. He scrolled down, mouth agape, skin pale. Claire's signature, the firm's letterhead, a copy with metadata, the timestamp, everything undeniable.
"Tell Claire it doesn't count," he mumbled, clutching the phone like he wanted to crush it. Another buzz. An email from his father, forwarding the signed agreement with a note. "The original file, so you know." The man he once called oblivious was now witnessing his son hand over everything on a silver platter. Ethan dropped his phone as if it burned his hand. I turned to Claire, who had been quietly watching the whole time. "I need something sweet," I said, my voice almost cheerful. "Can you cut the pie?" "Which kind?" she asked, quickly regaining her composure. "Apple, with extra whipped cream." As Claire cut the pie, I walked to the buffet counter, getting a clean plate. Ethan's eyes followed me, still panicked, still trying to catch up. I returned, sat next to Claire, and put the pie in front of me. I looked at him one last time that night. "I'm changing the locks tomorrow." Ethan looked defeated. "You think you won?" he rasped. I didn't answer. He wasn't worth it. I took a fork, bit into the pie. The warm cinnamon, the rich, flaky crust, it reminded me of a freedom I'd almost forgotten. Peace. He shoved his chair back, the legs screeching across the wooden floor, and stormed out, leaving the contract, the documents, and his shattered pride on the table. Silence for a few seconds. Claire let out a sigh. I always hated that blue suit. Laughter flickered, timidly, then spread. Lily giggled, and my mother-in-law covered her mouth with a napkin, though her eyes still avoided mine. I took another bite of pie, leaning toward Claire. Happy anniversary. She rested her head on my shoulder for a brief second. No fireworks, no screaming, just power quietly melting, through eye contact, through documents, and a sweet slice of pie. That night, everything changed, not because I flipped the script, but because I claimed myself back. Claire stayed the night. She looked at me and said, "You won't wake up alone tomorrow." No more words were needed. Claire and I slept in the guest room. I lay on my side, hand on my stomach, exhaling, a light breath, like the breath of a Rachel I never knew. Claire touched my hand in the dark, wordless, warm. I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding my breath until I let it go that night. The next morning, Ethan was gone. No note, no call, just silence. I walked downstairs, saw the cold coffee maker, no trace of his cologne. I made breakfast. The first time in weeks I didn't worry about the clinking of forks or the sound of the toaster. At 9 a.m. I called the locksmith. Standard lock change and make it fast. The locksmith arrived in the afternoon, his eyes kind, asking no questions as I handed him Ethan's old keys. Just make sure they're useless. Ethan became the talk of the town. Colleagues whispered in the elevator, "I can't believe he was like that." Friends stopped inviting him to weekend gatherings. The same people who once admired him avoided him at networking events. The company rumor mill started, pulling him from the senior management nomination due to poor personal judgment. Kyle was grilled by his wife about those business trips. She moved back to her mom's place, exposing the bet online, which cost Kyle a massive contract. He became reclusive, no longer showing up at barbecues. I just kept living. With my mother-in-law and Lily in the new house, all mine, on paper and in my heart. Working freelance online, I traveled, taught Lily how to bake, bought myself roses. One day, I wore the red silk dress again, put on the silver earrings Claire gave me, and smiled at my reflection. My own smile. I took off my wedding ring, placing it in the wooden box where I kept everything I had lost, next to the letter I never sent Ethan. The new house, paid for by the online trinket selling he used to mock. It's where I finally sleep soundly, without any strange scent. My silence was the loudest response. If you've ever found yourself again, share your strength here. I stood in the hallway, the new key in my hand. This was the first thing I owned just for myself in years. Not the house, not exactly, but the feeling of sovereignty. That evening, I moved into the master bedroom. There was still a faint scent of Ethan's expensive, cold cologne. I threw the windows wide open, letting the summer breeze rush through, sweeping away his traces. I stripped the bedsheets, shoving them into a trash bag. I found the sandalwood-scented candles in the cabinet. The ones I used to love. Before he complained, they gave him a headache. I lit 3, placing them on the dresser, watching the light dance on the wall, like it was just for me. Letters from Ethan started arriving, labeled red, final notice, overdue. I stacked them neatly on the table by the door. I didn't forward a single one. That night, Claire called, her voice chirpy. "You won't believe it. Ethan's lawyer called this morning, probably devastated when he saw what you had. The contract is official. He lost most of his assets." I smiled into the phone, wrapped in a blanket. "I'm so proud of you," Claire said, her voice softening. "You were always strong, you just didn't believe it until now." I whispered, "Thank you for sticking around when I didn't even know I needed anyone." Everything faded quietly like melting snow, no drama. A few friends unfollowed me online, choosing sides. A few messaged cautiously, starting with, "I'm not taking sides, but some were braver." A text from an old friend, 2 years without contact, wrote, "I wish I had your strength." A few days later, a bouquet of white roses arrived. No sender name, just a note. "It's time." I guessed it was from Sarah, Ethan's former assistant. I smiled, placing the flowers on the mantelpiece. The rumors reached Ethan's company. The man who used to joke about training his wife like an intern now had no audience. Kyle no longer laughed in meetings, his eyes darting away. Colleagues said Ethan left the office early, muttering missing deadlines. Claire's husband told me over the phone, "He looks haunted." Good. The man who once told me I was nothing without him now ate lunch alone, forgotten in the world that once cheered his cruelty. I started buying lavender soap. I painted Lily's room mint green, a color Ethan once called meaningless. I strung fairy lights around the window, placed a stuffed deer in the corner. In the evening I lit candles after dinner, sipping herbal tea in the sunroom, barefoot, carefree. One night, I found myself humming while folding clothes, something I hadn't done since our second anniversary. I bought new bed sheets, white with silver leaf patterns, and slept diagonally, because I could. One afternoon, I ran into Ethan outside the bank. He walked out on the phone, face scowling. He didn't see me or pretended not to. I walked on, without looking back. Later, Claire sent me a screenshot. The company deleted Ethan's name from the quarterly newsletter. I replied with a thumbs-up emoji, made tea, and watched the wind move the curtains. It was no longer about revenge. It was about freedom. Little things. Peace. One afternoon, Lily and I sat in the kitchen, making star-shaped cookies. Flour dusted her hands. Lily laughed loudly, calling me Ray, the name I thought was lost. My mother-in-law put on old jazz from the radio, knitting for her granddaughter, humming along to the melody. I sipped apple juice, the cinnamon scent a reminder of freedom, watching Lily draw stars on paper, listening to the music. The curtains swayed. I thought, he bet I would cry, but I rose up, for myself, in simple moments like these. I hugged Lily by the fireplace, whispering, "I'm Ray, and you are my light." I placed the white rose bouquet next to the wooden box where I kept the letter and the wedding ring, the things of the past. The new house, paid for by the freelance work Ethan used to mock, is where I live now, simple and whole. The woman Ethan tried to break is now rebuilding everything without him. One afternoon, I stood in the kitchen, teaching Lily how to slice peaches for a pie. She clumsily held the knife, giggling as peach juice ran down her hands. I put my hand on her shoulder, guiding her, and felt a moment of warmth, like a shared heartbeat between mother and daughter. That night, I opened my journal the first time in weeks, writing briefly but firmly. Lily will never hear shouting through the door. Never walk on shattered glass, never confuse fear with love. I underlined the last line twice. Sarah, my cousin, moved into the guest room, 2 suitcases and a basket of homemade lavender muffins. She wore a baggy hoodie, the gold hoops from college, and said, "I'm not letting you solo parent. Plus, someone has to stop you from eating pickles with ice cream." Sarah looked at me, her eyes slightly red, as if she realized how much I had endured in silence. We quickly fell into a rhythm. Sarah worked remotely at the kitchen table, wearing fuzzy socks in the summer, never mentioning Ethan, who was now just a distant name. The rumors about him persisted. No one invited him to the company year-end party. Colleagues who once called him Big Boss now avoided him in the elevator, whispering about the scandalous divorce. I didn't care. It no longer mattered. Claire visited every few days, bringing groceries, baked goods, and a parenting book with a humorous note. Page 42, "Don't teach Lily to draw on walls." She laughed as she sipped tea. The book's not bad. It's just that I once had a friend who colored my hair with crayons. We laughed more in those few weeks than we had in years. We didn't talk about the court, the contract, or the wounds Ethan left. We talked about recipes, curtain colors, how to fold a fitted sheet, and whether Claire's ex was secretly checking her Pinterest. Silence was no longer intimidating, but something we shared. Lily's room slowly took shape. I painted the walls pale yellow, refurbished old furniture. Every coat of paint was a step toward reclaiming myself. A massive armchair arrived in a huge box. Sarah wrestled with the instructions for 3 hours, then tossed them. This is the origin story of my villainy. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. One Sunday afternoon, I found a box in the hall closet. The ribbon crackled, the smell of cedar wood wafted out, our wedding photos. I sat on the living room floor, opening the lid. There we were, frozen smiles, vows wrapped in white silk, Ethan's hand around my waist, my eyes full of the dreams that had turned to ashes. I didn't cry. I didn't waver. I put the photos into an envelope, wrote, "Let go," drove to a charity center, dropped the box off, and walked away lighter. On the way home, I stopped by a bookstore, buying a leather-bound journal, thick ivory pages. That night, I wrote the first page, a plan that is solely mine. I wrote every night, long or short depending on the day, but always my own. One evening, I put on the red silk dress, wore the silver earrings Claire gave me, and stood in front of the mirror, smiling. Ray's smile, not Ethan's. I wrote in my journal, "Freedom doesn't need to be loud, it's just being true to yourself." The summer party arrived. The house smelled of cinnamon and orange. The dining table was small, warm, no pretenses, no wine glasses used as tools of seduction. The laughter was real, unforced. Claire brought her new boyfriend. My mother-in-law hummed jazz from the old radio. Lily spilled the sauce, yelling "oops" like a magician, making everyone roar with laughter. I taught Lily to bake star-shaped cookies. Flour dusted her hands, she called me Ray, and drew stars on paper. The wind moved the curtains, I sipped apple juice, the scent of cinnamon a reminder of freedom. Watching my daughter, thinking, I rose up for Lily, for myself, in these simple moments. I didn't feel a lack. I felt enough. Living with my mother-in-law and Lily in the new house, paid for by the online trinket selling Ethan used to mock. I worked freelance online, took short trips, bought roses, and laughed more than ever. My bed no longer smelled of Ethan's cologne, only the lavender I chose. My silence was the loudest response, and I never looked back. I hugged Lily by the fireplace, whispering, "I'm Ray, and you are my light." The wooden box now held the wedding photos, the letter, the ring, and the contract. The past I let go of. And the biggest lesson I learned: a woman should always have a financial plan B, even if it's just a small savings account or an independent earning skill. Because when happily ever after becomes a battlefield, self-sufficiency is the only thing no one can take away. If you've ever had to rebuild from scratch, comment "rebirth" to spread community strength. The New Year's party arrived. The house glowed with fairy lights, the fireplace diffused a warm cinnamon scent. I sat on the armchair, holding Lily, my most cherished daughter. She had Ethan's eyes, perhaps, but her smile, her rosy cheeks, her laughter were all mine. Lily held the edge of the blanket, chattering happily, calling me Ray, just like the day we made star cookies. Flour dusted all over her hands. I didn't glance at the door, didn't check my voice, didn't worry about compliments leading to mockery. I lived fully in every moment, every bite, every glance, every story shared between the dishes. After the party, everyone headed to the kitchen or went for a late-night stroll, but I stayed behind, holding Lily, whose head rested on my shoulder in the armchair. The even breathing of my daughter was warm. The fireplace crackled. My mother-in-law knitted for her grandchild, humming jazz from the old radio. The wind moved the curtains. I watched Lily draw stars on the tablecloth before leaning against me. I sipped the apple juice, the cinnamon scent a reminder of freedom, whispering, "He bet Mom would cry when she got the divorce papers." Lily stirred, clutching me tight. I kissed her forehead, smiling, but Mom rose up, and she has everything without him. This peace, no longer smelling of Ethan's cologne, was something I once thought was impossible. Living with Lily in the new house, with my mother-in-law's unwavering support, paid for by the online trinket selling Ethan used to mock. I worked freelance online, took short trips, bought roses, and smiled more than ever. I wore the red silk dress, the silver earrings Claire gave me, and never looked back. My silence was the loudest reply, not just survival, but a new life, even as scandalous divorce rumors about Ethan persisted. The wooden box held the ring, the letter, the contract, the past I let go of. My silence was the loudest reply. 6 months later, on an afternoon when my mother-in-law was visiting Ethan in the old city, my phone rang. Unfamiliar number, familiar area code. I answered. "Rachel, please listen." Her voice broke, thick with tears over the miles. "I'm at the hospital. Ethan, he tried to end things. The doctors say that seeing Lily even once might be the only thing that can pull him back. Please, he's still her father." I looked at Lily drawing in the room, the peaceful face I fought so hard to protect. A question gnawed at me. Would protecting my child from a toxic father become a cruel punishment if it led to his death? And if I agreed, would I be opening the door for the manipulation to return? I had not answered that call. There are wounds that never heal, and there are choices without a right answer. But I knew one thing: I would never let anyone else write my story again, not even with their despair. The moment I will never forget. It was when I pushed the gold gift box across the dinner table. Not to give a gift, but to end a game. What about you? What was the moment that took your breath away? Share it in the comments below. Maybe your story is exactly what someone else needs to hear. If you've ever survived silence, ever held on to your kindness when everything screamed at you to let go, hit the subscribe button. Not just to support us, but so that whenever you feel weak, you have a place to remind yourself, you are not alone. You are strong enough, and you deserve a new chapter.